50 years of tradition is ending, and the biggest award ceremony in entertainment is moving on. That is the headline last week from the big announcement from the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Those are the people that bring you the Oscars, of their decision to no longer air on the ABC television network beginning in 2029. Now, mind you, the Academy Awards have been on ABC since 1976. I suspect that's longer than most of the people watching this video have been alive.
Live, the 48th Annual Academy Awards presentation.
Good evening. This 48th presentation of awards by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences coincides with our nation's bicentennial. Just as that celebration is a proper time to examine our heritage and renew our commitment to the future, so it's an appropriate time to consider the role that motion pictures have played in reflecting our society, from the earliest one-reel silent films to today's extravaganzas of sight and sound.
So part of the reason why the Oscars are moving from ABC to YouTube, yeah, that's right, YouTube, they're not going to be on broadcast at all anymore, is because the Oscars actually demanded an increase in the royalty that ABC gives. So today, we're going to take on the challenge of how do you handle a situation when you're in a contract and it's time for renewal, and then the other side says, we actually want to pay you less next time and not more. Okay, so there are 4 key tactics I want to share with you on how to assess whether you should let the other person walk away or agree to the pay cut or keep on negotiating. Tactic number 1 is assess the competitive landscape. So in the situation between ABC and the Oscars, the reality is that the competitive landscape has changed enormously since 1976. In fact, it's changed enormously since the last decade, since 2015, when ABC and the American Academy signed their last contract. Even just a decade ago, streaming options were relatively limited. And while there were many cable options, the reality was that the broadcast networks were still the best way to bring in a very big and broad audience. But by 2025, the reality is that most people under the age of 40 do not get the majority of their entertainment from TV at all, and certainly not from broadcast. In fact, YouTube is the biggest provider of entertainment for young people. And so if you're thinking about, do I say yes to a lower pay? Part of what you need to be aware of is, what is the competitive landscape here? So it may well be the case that it's not so much that they're hard bargaining you or being jerks or being difficult. It might simply be the case that for them, the value that was there isn't there anymore because the market has changed.
We're fortunate enough to be joined by 2 of the stars of the show. Please say hello to Peter Griffin and his son Stewie from Family Guy. The Family Guy.
Yeah, it's just Family Guy, but yes. We're about to celebrate our 300th episode on another network. That's right. I'm not afraid to say it. Another network.
And that leads to the second piece of advice, because one of your jobs here is to see, is there a way I can work creatively to actually add value to this deal and make it more yesable to them? So what might that be? Well, in the case of ABC and the Academy, it might actually mean ABC offering more streaming opportunities on Disney Plus, on Hulu, and through other ABC channels. One of the things that's distinctive about the new deal between YouTube and the Oscars is that, at least as announced, YouTube and the American Academy of Motion Pictures has said that they're going to be making all sorts of engagement opportunities available to the public that didn't exist under the current contract. And so because YouTube is so ubiquitous, it's on almost all of our phones, it's on our TVs, it's on our devices. And because YouTube is so good at clipping things up in every single way, YouTube is going to be able to just provide a lot more value to the Academy than ABC ever has or could.
So pick me. Choose me. Love me.
For you, whether it's an employment situation or whether you're selling some kind of good, think about, are there ways that you can perhaps help with advertising, help with recruitment, show your value in some specific and creative way that takes the assessment away from what's the cheapest we can get this done to this person is creative and they're adding value, making it worth my while to pay a bit more. The third piece of advice here is don't rely on tradition or inertia. One of the mistakes that I have seen happen so frequently when I'm coaching folks, whether it's an employment situation or a contract situation, is they somehow say, we've always renewed, we have a really good relationship, they wouldn't change this tradition, they would never rock the boat. That might be true in an earlier age, but in today's day and age, that kind of lackadaisical, what I might call relationship-based or traditional-based approach doesn't work. And strategically, while I was not involved, of course, in the negotiations between ABC and the Oscars, my sense is that ABC thought, well, all Americans associate the Academy Awards with ABC. The Oscars surely wouldn't flip to NBC or to CBS. So we got this. In fact, we could charge them a bit more. I suspect that the folks at ABC didn't even think about the possibility that the American Academy would forget broadcast entirely and jump to YouTube. So your job in negotiation is, of course, tradition is nice. Of course, relationships matter. But you need to be not relying on that. You need to be thinking ahead and you need to be thinking out of the box. So if you think about the American Academy, one of their most important goals is just getting as many eyeballs on this award show as humanly possible, because those eyeballs will drive money and revenue and allow them to achieve a whole bunch of their other goals. And so if you fail to think about that underlying deep interest, you may over-rely on things like relationship or tradition or history. So here is the secret tip number 4, which is know your BATNA and improve your BATNA. So first of all, for those of you who are new to watching, what is a BATNA? A BATNA is your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. In other words, it's the thing that you're going to do if you don't reach an agreement. And so here you are in this negotiation with the other side that has said, we want to cut your wages by 3% next year. Or we know we've been paying you $2.50 per widget for the last 5 years. In the next 5 years, we want to pay you $2.25 per widget. How do you decide, do I say yes to this or do I walk? From an emotional perspective, of course, it's going to be like, take a hike, I'm walking. But that's where this idea of BATNA comes in. Because as unpleasant as it may be to say yes, you can only say no if you know that the thing you're going to do if you don't reach an agreement is actually better than what's on offer. One of the major mistakes I've seen people make is that they are emotionally hurt, their ego is wounded when the other side suggests a pay cut. And so they cross their arms and they say, no way. And then they're in a corner with nothing to do. And so this leads to the second part and really important part of this tip, which is before you go into that negotiation, you need to do everything you can to improve your BATNA. So if ABC's current BATNA on that Sunday night in early February, when they show the Academy Awards, is to do a rerun of The Wonderful World of Disney, that's kind of stinky.
stinky poo-poo. It's ridiculous.
If, on the other hand, they somehow get James Cameron to, for the next 5 years, have the TV version of Avatar, imagine their hand sitting there with the American Academy of Arts and Sciences is so much stronger. Oh, you movie-loving institution Academy Awards, if you bring this to YouTube, good for you. But all those movie lovers, they're going to be sitting here watching the world premiere of Avatar 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Suddenly, the Academy is going to be listening. So let's review our tips. When you are asked to take a pay cut, when you are asked to make concessions at a moment of renewal, the first thing you need to do is assess the market. As much as you want to hold firm, you need to make sure that you have a good idea of what has changed since the last time you made a deal. Second, do what you can to add value. In other words, think about what are the interests of the other side and how can I creatively make the case that they should keep that contract with me either at the same level or maybe for an increase because I'm going to be able to do a better job meeting their interests. Third, don't rest on your laurels and rely on tradition or inertia. Remember, times are changing and people's interests are fluid, and you have to be thinking ahead. And fourth and finally, know your BATNA and do whatever you can to improve your BATNA going forward. So let me give you some advice about how to improve your BATNA for sure going forward. Just order my new book, Conflict Resilience. The link is in the description below. Want to be a better negotiator? Watch this next video.